What drives you? What inspires you? Let's ignite your why. Welcome back to Ignite Your Why podcast. I'm your host, Austin T. Gullett, and we're here to have genuine conversations with authentic people to help amplify their voice and figure out what ignites their why. Today's guest was born and raised in Smithfield, Rhode Island. She obtained her bachelor's degree in English and her MAT in elementary education. And she's also obtained her master's of education in higher education. She currently works as an academic advisor at Northeastern University. So let's give a warm welcome to Taylor Chelo. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Oh, doing great. How are you?
You know, I'm really glad I got through that intro.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a lot. It's alphabet soup when it comes to the degrees, so it's all good.
People, you might not know, but this is my fourth time giving that intro, so we made it.
We're here. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Yeah, I'm honestly super tired. I woke up this morning, watched church. I just had a really long week, so just mentally drained, mentally exhausted. But I love doing this, and I'm super excited to finally have you on. I know we've been talking about it for quite some time now, so awesome. let's just hop straight into this thing. So, what is your story?
So my story is I'm the oldest of three in my family. And I think, and for anyone out there who is a firstborn in their family, they know you're kind of assumed the second parent, in your family dynamic. And it allowed me to be almost like a caregiver in a way to my siblings and to ultimately assume these natural leadership skills in a way when you're in that position in your family. So that kind of helped me into my professional life down the road, which I'll get into in a moment. So not only was my birth order, I feel a big part of becoming who I am, but also two specific medical challenges that I've undergone myself that has made me who I am today. And I'm a 2-time open heart surgery survivor. So ultimately what happened was when I was born in September, again, firstborn. And, when you're parents like mine, you don't anticipate, the big challenges like that to happen. You're just so excited and to welcome this new child into the world. And so you can only imagine my parents, feeling when they were told that their firstborn daughter was born with 2 holes in their heart. So I was born with an atrial septal defect, or an ASD, more alphabet soup here, and a ventricular septal defect, or a VSD, which are congenital heart defects that are found often in newborns, believe it or not. And it just happens with, some hiccups in development and whatnot. So when I was 9 days old, so in October, right after I was born, I had my first open heart surgery, which is pretty crazy. So
it's honestly scary. I couldn't even imagine as a parent, the emotions you're feeling, especially with your firstborn.
Seriously. Yeah. And of course, I was unaware of what was happening, obviously, because I was literally just born. But, when my parents talked to me about it, after the fact, and hearing the emotion that they still, hold on to, from something like that is crazy. And the way that they got through it was, I was born and raised Catholic as well. And we have always been such holders of our faith and turning to it during times of challenge. And that really stuck with me throughout my upbringing as well. So between the faith, my big family that's so full of love and support, that's what got them through it. And of course, we can't not give credit to the amazing medical team of Boston Children's Hospital. They were outstanding. And in fact, going into my second open heart surgery, I had the same surgeon as I had for the first one in the second one as well. So was, yeah.
Kind of
so he was probably what the heck are you here for again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously I ended up being just fine, after that first open heart surgery. I got the 2 holes fixed by that incredible medical team. And I grew up just as any other child would. I went through elementary ed, through middle school, and I went to my parish's, elementary ed and middle school institutions. And I grew up as a competitive figure skater. I did that for 14 years, and I played soccer as well. I know, Austin, I think you are a big soccer fan, as you can see.
As I'm wearing my soccer shirt.
Yeah. So I loved being an athlete, and, thank God I was able to do that because of being fixed, I guess you could say, all those years back. So when I got into 8th grade, my best friend Christina had asked me to do cross country with her. And I was like, yeah, sure. It'll only help my stamina in
Oh
playing
no, cross
sports.
country. No, 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 no.
Listen, I still,
As a soccer player, I'm like, that's a lot of running, but
yeah.
I feel like when you're running in soccer, it's different than if you're running like cross country because
Oh
like
my
you're
gosh.
intentionally choosing to run miles.
Yes. Like my sister was such an amazing runner. And I don't know if I was like trying to be like her or what, but ever since this one time, which I'll get into in a second, I've never been like a long distance person at
Mhm.
all. Like I was into the sprints when I transitioned to lacrosse later on, but oh my gosh, I give runners a heck of a lot of credit. So wild. So yeah, so I started cross country in 8th grade, or at least tried to.
Mhm.
And I went to the first practice with my best friend, Christina. We were literally doing the practice lap. And after I had finished with her, I started experiencing chest pain. And I was like, this never happens on the ice. This never happens on the soccer field. Like, what's going on? So I went to my cardiologist at the time because ever since my first surgery, you have to kind of like your PCP and everything. You go for annual or biannual
Yeah.
checkups. So I had mine a little early given the symptom I experienced. And it turned out that the scar tissue from my first surgery grew as I got older and developed over time into a membrane near my aortic valve. So it was essentially kind of going like this. And it was obstructing, all the cardiovascular activity that was going on. So at that point, my family and I were faced with a decision because I'm only like 12 or 13 at this point.
Mhm.
And they had said, yeah, it's not to a point where it's delaying your breathing or anything crazy, but it is abnormal that you're experiencing chest pain at this stage. And so they did give us a choice as to, when to do like a second open heart surgery to essentially take out that membrane. And, with my mom being an RN and has been for 30 years now, and her knowing all the things about the body and everything else, she said that, after talking with me, that it would be best for me to do it now while I was young, resilient, more able to bounce back. So in March 11th of 2009, I got my second one. And again, same surgeon as the first time. So kind of crazy. He was the chief surgeon in like the pediatric cardiac unit at Boston
Mhm.
Children's at the time. And shout out to Dr. Pedro Del Nido if he's listening. He's incredible. He fixed me twice. And even with having a left collapsed lung after my surgery, typically without complications, you recover within a week and go home. I was home in 3 days,
That's
which is
insane.
insane. Yeah. So again, like the medical team and even just again with that faith community being so important. Like I went to a Catholic school and
Mhm.
I'll never forget like the week leading up to it before like I went into surgery. My whole middle school and school, like they did like a oh my God, pep rally for
Yeah.
me. And they had like heart stuff everywhere. My locker was like decorated with like heart, like confetti and everything. And then when they like, I had a few like Catholic schools in the state who stopped and prayed for me. Like at the time I was going into surgery, like that's really when like going to church had transitioned from being that moment that I connect with my family and that thing we did on Sundays to something so much bigger than that. And
Mhm.
it got me through challenges from that point forward. So it was like the most transformational experiences I've ever been a part of.
I think that's pretty awesome because it's so amazing how small communities can kind of just come together and rally behind a common cause, right? And I think that just goes to show like there is good in the world, especially like the world we live in. It's just kind of chaotic at times, but I think it's truly inspiring. Especially like how you were able to play sports still. Like that was my biggest question was is like, isn't it like scary sometimes for you? Like, were you ever like, you said you went on and played like lacrosse like later on. I'm assuming that was in high school.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
So
was.
like, did it ever like did you ever have like that fear of like, oh shit, like this could happen again or anything of that kind of nature? Because I can only imagine the process and the trauma and emotions that come with that kind of experience. So I'm just curious, like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I had come home again 3 days after the surgery, which was nuts, I came home and recovered. I was out of school for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then I was back into sports about 6 to 8 weeks post op. which also was not too bad, all things considered. Of course, you take it easy and everything. But with figure skating, I had grown up in that sport. Like literally, I started skating at like 5 or 6 years old. So at that point, it was more of just making sure I was like cognizant of my breath and things like that. A lot of the times, and we were just talking about being perfectionists because I can be like that as well. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed most of my life. And
Man.
so when I got back to the ice, I was like, forgetting the whole idea that I literally just had my second open heart
Yeah.
surgery and was like, I got to land this jump. I got to land this spin. Like I have to like bounce back. And which is, bouncing back is a great attitude to have, of course. But when it comes to a point of taking a toll on your mental health and putting that pressure, like that's when your sport doesn't become as fun anymore. So I had to remind myself like a lot about that. But in terms of like stamina, I was fine in figure skating. Like I kind of just, went with it over time. But when I transitioned to lacrosse, it was, playing on that same field and running on those same fields. I had that, little cardiac event, like when I did cross country.
Yeah.
So when I went to a Division I high school where the pressure was on in terms of the, the tryouts and everything, and we had to run like say a mile and it was timed, all my thoughts just went back to that first time and I had like my, that chest pain. And I was like,
Right.
Oh dear God, like, is this going to happen again? But I want to make the team. And so it's such a mind game, but I eventually got over it. And
I think that's the thing of being athletes, though, is like when you go through these experiences, especially like injuries or anything that keeps you from playing, you always kind of remember like the player you once were, right? Because I kind of think back to like when I tore my labrum in high school and I had to miss my entire junior baseball season. So it's like you have this mindset where you're just like, I just want to play. I just want to get there. And you want to get there now. And then you have setbacks and different things of that nature. And it's just, I think it shows a lot of resiliency, but it also teaches you a lot in life, right? Nothing comes easy. And you're going to have to continuously work to get to where you want to be, right? I try to tell people all the time now, especially like the kids I coach, is like, nothing's going to be handed to you, right? Like if you want something, like you have to work for it. And the only way you're going to get that success is if you continue to put in that work. Like, it's just like a constant thing as athletes. And I think like, I never truly understood the lessons I learned from sports until I no longer played those sports, right? So you get to this point in life where sports were like everything. And then once they're like gone, you're just like, what's next? Right?
No, 100%. And you actually just unlocked a memory for me. It was when I had just got home from my second open heart surgery and I had some friends from my middle school class like come visit me and say hello and like be like, you're alive. Because, when you're 12 and 13, you're just like, oh my God, like this literally just happened to you. And you just can't believe it. And some of my friends were also athletes at the time. And we had a basketball hoop like in my driveway in Smithfield. And I'll never forget, like some of the guys who came to visit me were going to play basketball for a little bit while I was talking to some of their families. And I was like, of course, like laying on my couch, like trying to heal. And I snuck away, like essentially because I was bedridden. And I was like, walking slowly down my back deck stairs to go play basketball with them. And they're like, oh my God, Taylor, like, shoot him. And my mom, as like the orange, she was like, Taylor, oh my God. Like, she was like, what are you doing? So again, like what you were saying about like that competitive, like nature that you just have as an athlete and you want to get back so bad. Like even, 72 hours post-op, I was like, let me shoot some hoops.
It's the grind. It's the determination.
Yeah.
I can only imagine like your mom freaking out though, because especially if she works in the medical field, she's probably like, sit your ass down now. Like,
what are you doing? Yeah. Oh my gosh. The look in her face was just, oh my gosh, like comical, but also like, okay, I'm gonna obey the,
I'm okay.
Yeah, like let's not push too much. I'm like,
yeah,
be here,
okay.
Yeah.
You're the boss. I'll listen. Okay.
Yeah, right.
No, but I think it's truly inspiring. Like you've been through a lot as a child and it kind of helped shape you into who you are today, which kind of wants me to lead into my next segment here. It's the biggest segment. I wouldn't say the biggest, but it's the biggest core of like this whole podcast. So what is it that truly inspires you? But more importantly, what is it that ignites your why?
Absolutely. So I definitely believe that my 2 open heart surgeries have kind of like ignited my why in a way,
Hmm.
and if not, just propelled me to explore it more. When you undergo two open heart surgeries like that, you realize to yourself that, I there could have been anything that happens, in a big surgery like that with such a vital organ on the line. And I could have died twice, if putting it plain and simple, And so because of that thinking I had when I was literally 13 years old, mind you, I was like, I need to take advantage of the life I'm given. You know what I mean? And like every heartbeat's, valuable. And, that's what really caused me to kind of like just live every moment that I can. And it's what made me into a yes woman. And of course, my upbringing was like a big part of like becoming who I am. But I think, that also instilled more of this optimism in me. Like, if I can get through this, I can do anything.
Right.
So when I was in eighth grade, again, like I had said, I was out of school for about like 2 or 3 weeks. But I was also in the middle of applying to like my dream high school of LaSalle Academy here in Providence. And I wanted to still finish academically strong, in my eighth grade time at St. Philip's School where I went. And turns out, like with the perseverance and the help of all of my teachers during the time of my recovery, I ended up becoming the valedictorian of my graduating eighth grade class.
Okay,
So
period.
thank you. I'm like super nerd and I still am, but that really like if that isn't the title, oh man, it was amazing. So again, without the support of everyone around me, I definitely wouldn't have gotten there. And I got into my dream high school from there. And so I said, okay, like we're coming back, we're bouncing back. Um, Through that time when I was at LaSalle Academy, I got involved in like an enrichment program for students who were becoming scholars. And I also went on a mission trip to Montego Bay, Jamaica, where I was able to give back to students and orphans like in that country and everything. And I'll never forget, throughout my time of being a child, I've always thought that education was for me. Like that was like
Mhm.
my calling. Like I was in elementary ed, teaching in religious education at the time with my mom, and that really instilled like a lot of that teacher in me. But then I was getting some pushback from, outside forces about how, oh, like you're not going to make enough money being a teacher. And
Yep.
but let's be real, and especially in the time that we've been in COVID, like teachers don't go into it for the cash. You know what I mean?
At
Like
all, at
it's
all. It
yeah,
is
it's really
definitely comes from passion and heart, and teachers do not get enough. I can preach that over and over again, and I think teachers are so valuable, and they are really just teaching our next generation and deserve much more than what they get now. So,
for
right
sure.
there with you.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page here. Yeah, for sure. So when I was there for a week in Montego Bay, Jamaica, with some missionaries from my high school, I was doing some like work projects around like the village that they were at. Like you paint some of the buildings there, you do some
Mhm.
landscaping work to beautify the environment that these children are essentially living in and being a part of their own little family unit. And one of the children who I had come close with was like ran right up to me, and he was pulling on my shirt and he said, come. And as you know, like, English isn't their first language. So they do anything they can to communicate what they want to tell you. And so I said, where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to go? And mind you, in that village, they have this like ramshackle, like essentially it's like a shack in a way. And it's their school building for all these kids that are all these different ages. And they just go during times of the day to
Yeah.
educate, get educated and whatnot. And they all wore these like color coded t-shirts that had like what their grade was. And it said, I'm in like kindergarten or I'm in third grade, according to their like, education structure. So this little boy who was coming up to me, asking me to come with him, I was like, where are we going? And he had one of those like oversized big shirts on. It was bright red and it said, I'm in kindergarten. And he took it off and handed it to me. Like, I want you to come with me to school. And that, between like my faith and I believe in signs and everything, and at the time I wasn't sure if I was going to go to college to be a teacher, that solidified everything for me. Like that
Mhm.
was a sign from God being like, this is your calling and you're going to pursue it. And so that was everything to me. And so that's what led me to go to Quinnipiac University in Southern Connecticut for my bachelor's in English, master's in teaching for elementary ed. And I taught fourth grade through the pandemic at a Title I public school for 4 years.
Teaching in the pandemic.
Whew,
Nothing like it. I've heard so many stories.
wild. Yeah, for
And was
sure.
this like, so when did you graduate with your degree and start teaching? Was it like 2019, 2020?
So I graduated with my English bachelor's in 2017.
Hmm.
And then it was one of those accelerated master's programs where it was almost like a 4+1 for the MAT degree. So I literally the Monday after I graduated and walked for my bachelor's, it was like, all right, grad school time, you know? So I took my 5th year at Quinnipiac to do, an internship at a local school and everything to prepare me. So I graduated with my MAT in 2018, and that's when I got a job right out of graduating, and I taught from 2018 until 2022. So like the first half
So
was regular, second half.
yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering because like my brother, like when he started teaching, like he started in like 2019. So he had like
Mhm.
one, I guess, like normal year, and then maybe not even a full year because it happened in 2020. So like his first
Right,
half of the school year was like normal, and then they went to straight like online learning, which is a huge
right.
adjustment as teachers. And I think it's truly amazing. Like I feel like our values are somewhat similar, and I love helping and giving back to my community and just leaving a positive impact. Especially just with the small like city I grew up in, and just seeing the things I've seen, and just being able to make a difference is truly what I love to do. And I feel like that's the same thing. And I think teachers all go into it because they see the potential all of our students have, right? I always
Mhm.
say, like, I hate when people say kids are at risk, because none of our kids are at risk. They're at promise, right? We just have to
Love
give
that.
them those resources to be successful. And I think teachers do a great job at that. So I truly commend you on doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
But what made the switch for you? What made you decide to quit doing elementary ed and go into higher ed?
Sure. So throughout my time at Quinnipiac, I went into Quinnipiac knowing about the MAT program, and I was like, wow, like this is perfect for me and
Hmm.
my ambitions to be in education. But something that I noticed over time when I was at Quinnipiac are all these opportunities that I think not only I did create for myself, but also, again, you make plans and God laughs kind of thing. So when I was going into Quinnipiac, I had background in using this software called the ePortfolio. It's essentially like this, highly individualized, completely, structural,
Hmm.
web-based platform where students can, as they grow, like their e-portfolio grows with them, and they can like upload learning artifacts and things they're proud of, and it gives like employers and grad schools a better picture of who the student is. So because I used that same software in high school through my enrichment program, I brought that prior experience to being an undergrad at Quinnipiac. So when I was in the first year seminar as a freshman at Quinnipiac, they had us start to build this e-portfolio, and it turned out to be the same exact software that I used in high school. So I took it and ran with it, and the professor noticed that I was really picking it up quick. And at the time, the university was shaping and shifting, their first year curriculum, but also, how can we have our students really, you know, meet the essential learning outcomes of the university and really like make more meaning with their experience as an undergrad. So I was a part of a focus group at the time when I was a freshman, and it was led by the at the time the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning there. And after the focus group, I was like, I feel like so like it was like an electric experience because I was like, wow, like I really like higher ed. Like I love having like a seat at the table to have these conversations of shaping higher ed. And I always knew that I was placed on this earth to help students to figure out who they are and like what their purpose in life is. And I was so blessed to have known that from the get go that I was meant to be in education. So I want to help the students who don't really know what their purpose is and help them to find it. And for whatever reason, I thought it was elementary ed, but as I've come to realize through my own higher ed experience, it really does happen at the higher ed level. So
Hmm.
that's what really inspired me to network with that director of the Center for Teaching and Learning there at Quinnipiac. That led into me being a TA for their new first year seminar course. And then it expedited even further into me like teaching faculty how to use the ePortfolio. And I essentially, started this whole initiative of creating an ePortfolio, like university wide initiative. And it developed into me presenting at national, international conferences. The vice president and provost of the university with the board of trustees in Palm Beach, I was like there, and I was asked to present to them. And I was like, okay, I'm an undergrad and these things are just like happening.
Right,
And
right.
it's wild. So that's really where I was like, okay, I know this is what's meant for me. Like these doors are opening. So I did go with my gut and I went through elementary ed just to make sure that that was definitely it for me or not it for me. And while it
Right.
was very, rewarding experience through the pandemic and the whole thing, I had that itch in the back of my mind being like, higher ed, I think this is it. So the latter half of my last 2 years of being an elementary ed teacher in the pandemic, because no better time to get a second master's. I did,
True, true, true.
why not, right? Why not? I got my second master's, but in higher ed, and I did it online through Providence College. And in 2022, I graduated and made that career shift. And now I'm at Northeastern and I'm incredibly happy with the team and where I'm at.
That's so interesting because when I think of just like my college experience and the friends that I made, it was interesting because a lot of people don't realize what higher ed and the multitude of jobs that are out there in higher ed until they're in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends came in and they're like, I want to be a teacher. I want to do like elementary education. And then when they get exposed to this career in this profession, they're like, this is so much more interesting. And I always find it interesting when people are in higher education because everyone's story is different. I feel like I've had a few people on this podcast who work in higher ed, and everyone's story of how they got there is completely different. And I think it's truly amazing. Academic advisors in college, they are so helpful, especially when it comes to like just scheduling classes and just staying on top of your shit to make sure you graduate. So props
Yeah.
to you. Thank you for
Thank you.
doing
Yeah. No,
for
I really
doing what you do.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'll never forget too, when I look back at the craziness of being like a teacher, a grad student through a pandemic. And then I did other like side hustles too, like hostessing and like photography at the time. Cause I was, I had my own property as well, like here in Providence. And I look back and I'm like, how the heck did I do that? But I always go back to this time when I was in an interview for an elementary ed, internship when I was a grad student. And the principal knew my story because I had done field work there, like when I was, getting into education. And he knew about my open heart surgeries because I actually speak to that sometimes in my interviews because it truly has made me the professional I am too in a way. And we were talking about, like, what are you like in the workplace? How do you work with a team and all these things? And, I told him, I was like, to be honest, I'm really not trying to like, make things up here. Like I am the last person you'll hear complaining. Like I choose to do what I love. And even when, things get challenging, you work your way through it. And I look at challenges as opportunities for growth and learning. And I'll never forget what he said after that. He said, well, Taylor, you know what a big deal is. And I was like, you're absolutely right, because I've had my heart on the line twice physically, and I now realize like that's the reason why I am who I am and why I am the way I am in the workplace. And that's how I also like ignite the whys in my students too. And when they go through challenges, kind of like thinking of it big picture and saying, okay, like what strengths do you have that we can use to propel you to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when I think back to my story of my 2 open heart surgeries and all those things, it continues to ignite my why, my students' why each and every day. So it's, my open heart surgeries, I would never change a thing because they have made me
it makes you look at life differently.
Oh my gosh,
when you go through experiences like that, I can only imagine, just it makes you embrace the moment you're in, right? Because you never know, like you've been blessed with a second chance twice now. So it's kind of just thinking of living in the moment and truly honing on that, which is it's hard for a lot of people to do. I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard for me because I'm just like an overthinker and I'm like, okay, like what's gonna happen next? Or I think the worst of every situation to prepare myself for something that may not actually happen. My therapist tells me all the time, she's just like, come here, live here, not she like, okay, like the way she explains it is like, that ball that like can expand.
Yes.
Right.
I use it with my students. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, you're living out here.
That's a really good
Like,
visual though. Yeah.
and you need to like hone in and be here. And like another thing was is she explained just like kind of like a diagram of like a gingerbread, and like there was a line inside the line, and she's like, you're living on like the outside crust, you're not living
Uh,
on the inside. And I'm just like, why are you
yeah.
getting deep with me? Like, I don't like this. But
Yeah.
I think it's truly inspiring that like you have this mindset and you're able to teach the youth the same thing, because if you learn at a younger age, it's easier to kind of adapt and learn and make it a habit. Whereas when you get to that adult stage, you have to relive those traumas and try to heal from those, and it takes time. So I do.
100% it takes time. Definitely.
So
Oh, of
speaking of mental health a little bit here, it's my favorite subject. So I want to kind of go into the next segment here.
course.
So with everything that's going on in the world and just how life can get crazy at time, how are you taking care of yourself mentally?
Definitely. So, not only through like my open heart surgeries have I realized the importance of mental health, but also through, other challenges I've experienced in my life. Throughout my undergraduate career at Quinnipiac, like I had said before, I was such a perfectionist. I put so much, pressure on myself to succeed. And during my junior year, where I was unsure of, what path in education I was going to go through, I was going through this like little mini like existential crisis, not to be dramatic, but kind of in a way. I actually sought out mental health support on campus. And I tell this to my undergraduate students at Northeastern as well, especially now where there is this like almost like this crisis of getting mental health support and getting connected with somebody. You and whoever else is helping you to financially support you through your undergraduate career, you have these available resources to you that you're invested in. And so why not take advantage of, the mental health services on campus and getting connected with the therapist that you need right there. And that's such a crazy time, during your development as well, just not as a student, but also just as a person.
Hmm.
So when I was an undergrad, and I tell my students this now, like when things were heating up, when the pressure was on academically and otherwise, I said, you know what? I need to crush the stigma. I need to get past it, and I need to do what I need to do for myself. So I only had to go for 3 sessions to get what I needed, like, stress relief strategies, ways to time manage, like all of those things. And then I was okay. But of course, if you need more long-term support, go for it. So that's what I tuned into when I was a student. Now, though, in terms of mental health, I try to exercise as much as I can, both for cardiovascular, health, and also my mental health. Throughout this past year, I unfortunately had lost a few people very, very close to me who I loved within a year span, which was a lot. So I tapped into grief counseling for a solid year to help with those coping mechanisms and those
Hmm.
perseverance strategies, and to still stay connected to those people that I lost, but also to learn how to move forward, with my family as my support system, of course, as well. And last but not least, in terms of mental health, I go to my faith, and that's always been a constant for me. So whether you're Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever it may be, whatever you worship and celebrate, always adhere to that, hold on to it. And of course, my DMs, and I am always open for anyone who is still trying to figure that out. I've explored different religions throughout my high school experience as well. Catholicism ended up being for me, and that's what I stuck with all my life. So if you ever want to talk through that, anyone listening who feels a little lost spiritually, happy to help with that. It's definitely been a great community to tap into, and the power of prayer is so incredibly important through times of challenge like I've been through. So, yeah, through my open heart surgeries, the mental health and the physical health side of things, I've come to learn that no matter what life throws at you, life beats on, and it can beat on with the proper supports in place.
Hey, I'm just here like amazed just listening to like you talk. And it's just, I think mental health is just so important. I kind of have a similar story of when I started. I started in college because it was free. And I loved, I didn't start till grad school. So I
Mm.
absolutely loved my therapist at Xavier University. And truly, like, I like tried to get her like as my actual therapist outside of school because she has her own practice, but she was always full. So I was like, dang it. And I think the hardest thing, like especially sometimes in therapy, is just starting over. right? You go through this process of talking to someone and you kind of start to get comfortable. And then I graduated and I could no longer go there anymore. So it was kind of just like I had to start from square one. So I think it is vital, especially like when you are in college, because it is stressful, especially when you're trying to manage your schoolwork and work and whatever other hardships that come up in your life. You utilize your resources, right? And I think that's the thing a lot of people don't necessarily understand. A lot of students in college don't realize they have these resources at their disposal. So I think it's amazing how you're using your past experiences to educate and advocate for students and letting them know like it is okay to not be okay and it's okay to seek help. And everyone needs to realize that like it was okay to not feel okay, because whatever storm you're going through, it'll eventually get better, right? I try to just take it one day at a time, because that's the only way you can do it. Like things aren't going to change overnight, and it's just it'll get better. It will. You might not see it now, but if you just keep pushing forward, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. And I, as someone who has been such a advocate about physical health and, heart health and things of that nature, I've come to realize how important it is for hopefully our world to shift towards the idea that, every person should not only have a primary care physician, but they should also have like a mental health physician in their corner that they routinely see like every so often when they need it or just to do a check-in. And I'm glad you touched upon the importance of, tapping into resources and organizations to help to support student development. And even just as a way of educating yourself on, what challenges, people face out there. Like one of the ways, like through my heart experience, is, my passion of giving back, and especially in the American Heart Association, scheme of things. And they have an incredible, organization where they do educate others. And you don't even have to have like a cardiac history like me to tap into that, that organization to get supported and to get educated on what could happen with your heart. And so through the American Heart Association, I've been able to share my story kind of on a larger scale. And so this past year, I was named the Heart to Heart Storyteller of 2022 and 2023 for Rhode Island, along with my friend Kathleen, who has also undergone, cardiac challenges of her own. And we were able to speak at, the American Heart Association Women's Luncheon back in February, which was incredible. I was able to, connect with 600 women, and people who have gone through similar things that I have. And so again, that importance of community is so key. And so I still have this like passion to give back, especially, at the grand scale of the American Heart Association. And so I'm so excited that I have this podcast to talk about this more, because in the year of 2023, I'm going to be running to be a leader of impact for Rhode Island and being a part of this blind 7-week competition where people like myself and change makers like myself want to not only raise funds for the American Heart Association, but also to engage people in what it means to be heart healthy and to be mindful of your health. And so I have a lofty goal of raising $50,000 in that 7-week span. And I'm happy to share, anyone who's listening who wants to be a part of that or donate, maybe Austin, you can share, my page and everything. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I got you.
So any way that we can all make sure that life beats on, it'd be amazing.
Of course, I will make sure to share that on my page and share it in the description of this podcast below. I think it's crazy because I think back to when I was in elementary school and we would always do those fundraisers for the American Heart Association.
Yes.
And I remember going to like neighbors and being like, would you like to donate? And like they had like a gift for each level of like where you could get like a jump rope and a t-shirt and things of that nature. And I just vividly remember doing that in elementary school.
Yeah, Jump Up the Heart, I think it was called, right?
Yeah. I think that's what it was. And it not mind blows me, but like it blows my mind because I have like some neighbors that my parents still live by, and they're like, I remember when you were just like this cute little kid and you would come knock on my door, and they're like, we couldn't say no because like so I'm like thank you. So I think it's amazing how you're continuing to advocate for such an important cause, and I think you're going to reach your goal regardless. So $50,000 in 7 weeks, You got this.
Yes.
I think just word of mouth, just promoting it is the biggest thing. So I know I'll share it on my pages, my
Thank
personal
you.
pages, and all of that. So we'll help you reach 50,000.
That's it. Yeah.
Hopefully we can exceed that. So
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm tapping into all my communities and everything. And, I even told myself too, like, I know it's a pretty lofty goal to have, but no matter what money I raise, it's going to a good cause regardless. And I'm going to be proud of myself regardless with, a team of
right.
really passionate fundraisers. That's all we can do is do the best to give back.
I mean, you got to aim high.
That's it. That's
And
it.
that's the thing. Aim high. Because
Far.
if you don't, like, I tell people all the time, is like, if you're trying to get 1,000 and you raise 50, it's more than what you had before. So
Exactly.
something's better than nothing.
That's right. Amen.
So I do want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to hop on the podcast and just share your story. If anyone wants to continue having a conversation with you about anything that we've talked about today, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram pretty actively. So my Instagram handle is at Taylor Chelo. So TaylorChelo. So if you want to hit me up on DMs, anything like that, I do have an email as well, Taychello, so same spelling, at gmail.com as well, if you ever want to continue the conversation. Thank you so much, Austin.
Of course. Thank you for hopping on. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I'm going to put all of Taylor's information in the description below. If you guys happen to reach out to her, please just make sure you notate on how you found her. It will be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you all for tuning in, and make sure you give us a follow on all social media platforms. It's at Ignyte Your Y. That's INGYTE, not with an I. So we are on every platform, including Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're there. So make sure you give us a follow. Again, thank you for tuning in. And always remember, find your purpose and ignite your why. And I'll holler at you later. Peace. Oh.